Today, we're going to talk about meetings. And meetings are an interesting thing because so many leaders will say, boy, if I didn't have to go to meetings, I would really like my job. But we've kind of come to see meetings as a pain in the working world. But the truth is, meetings are the single most important activity for a team. As I like to say, for a leader not to like meetings would be like a quarterback of a football team not to like games, or for a surgeon not to like operating on people, or for a teacher not to like the classroom. Meetings are where leaders lead and where teams come together and make decisions and solve problems. The fact that we don't like them only means that we need to make them better. And there's two big reasons why meetings are usually pretty bad. The first one is that they're boring. And nothing that's boring is good. A boring class is not a good class. A boring movie is not a good movie. Boredom is not something we're meant to be bored. So how do we make our meetings less boring? Well, there's two things I like to say about this, and I get this from the world of screenwriting. The first thing is the first 10 minutes of a meeting are critical. Just like the first 10 minutes of a movie or the first 10 pages of a screenplay, they have to hook people and make you glad you're there. Give you a reason for wanting to be there. Raise the stakes so people realize, hey, what happens during this next hour or two matters, and I should care. And if I do a bad job, if I'm bored and unengaged, something bad could happen to the organization, to the team, or to our employees or our customers. So at the beginning of a meeting, a leader has to hook people and say, here's why this meeting matters, and here's why we need to make good decisions, to lean forward, to maybe argue, because at the end of this meeting, the outcome is important. The second reason why meetings are boring is because they lack conflict. And that's true of any meeting or any story. At the heart of any great movie, there's conflict. There's opposing forces, and we want to know who's going to win. How is it going to be resolved? And in literature, they talk about man versus man, or woman versus woman, two people opposing one another, or man versus nature, a natural disaster, and how we're going to get through that, or man or woman versus himself or herself. You're dealing with an internal conflict. Whatever it is, we care. We want to see how it's going to get resolved, and that's why we stay concerned. Well, the same should be true in a meeting. If there's a purpose for that meeting, there's a reason to care, and there's opposing forces. Maybe our competitors are against us. Maybe there's a market force going on. Maybe there's something happening internally that we have to resolve. Our job as leaders of meetings is to make sure people know that there's a reason to care and that we're going to engage in conflict. And at the end of the meeting, there will be resolution and gratification, and hopefully even a little bit of exhaustion because we've really poured into it. Okay, so boredom, that's how we fix that. The second reason, though, that meetings are bad is because they're kind of confusing. We have too many things going on that don't belong in the same meeting. This is so common. And we end up wondering, what am I doing here? What am I supposed to be doing? And what's the resolution we're looking for? I like to call these kinds of meetings meeting stew. It's a bad meeting stew. It's like a cook taking all the ingredients out of the cupboards and throwing it into one pot and mixing it together. And then we wonder why it doesn't taste so good. Well, different ingredients should be in different bowls or in different saucepans, and we should be keeping them separate because not everything deserves to go together. And when it comes to meetings, our minds cannot process everything in one setting. So I like to say that there should be 4 kinds of meetings. Any group of leaders should have 4 different kinds of meetings. Now, right away, people say 4 meetings instead of 1. And I'm like, yes, but they're going to be shorter. They're going to be more focused. And more importantly, they're actually each of them going to be really effective. And you won't lament going to any of these meetings because you're going to understand why you're there. So let's go through the 4 different types of meetings. The first one is what I call the daily check-in. Now, I think every leadership team should have a daily check-in, and it's 5 to 10 minutes long, no more. Now, even if you're not co-located, even if you're distributed across the country, you can still have a daily check-in. You can use technology to do that. You can do it on conference call. The point here is this. Once a day, people on a leadership team should get together and just say, what's going on? This is primarily an administrative function, allowing people just to stay in touch with one another and know that not more than 24 hours are going to pass before you get a chance to kind of connect again. This is critical. It's 5 to 10 minutes a day, and it's easily doable. And if you do it for 3 or 4 weeks, you're going to get so used to it that you're never going to want to go back. It's the least important of the four, and I still think it's important. The next meeting, though, is particularly important because we think it's the only meeting we need to have. And that is what I call the weekly tactical. For many people, they call this their staff meeting, where they get together once a week, but that's where meeting stew happens. They talk about everything from administrative things to strategic things, to vision, to tactics, to solving near-term problems, to wondering about the future. And people come out of those meetings feeling like they're just confused. They're dizzy. And that's because we're not meant to have all those conversations in one setting. So the weekly tactical should be focused on the near-term objectives of the team and the organization, and how do we assess how we're doing and solve near-term problems so we can keep moving the ball down the field. Now, what we can't do in these meetings is get trapped into administrative details, nor can we get lost in bigger, longer-term issues that require more time. These meetings should be an hour to 90 minutes. It's going to depend, but it's going to be something that you can get your hands around and really get work done. Now, sometimes a big hairy issue comes up during one of these meetings. It's going to take too much time and require too much research to actually solve in 10 or 15 minutes during your weekly tactical meeting. That's where the third kind of meeting comes in. And this, to me, is the most fun. And that's what I call the monthly. And it might have to happen more often depending on what's going on. We sometimes think of it as ad hoc, but strategic meetings. This is the meeting where some big issue needs to be resolved. We might need to do a little bit of research. We need to go in, carve out 2 hours. Maybe we're going to bring something to eat and something to drink, roll up our sleeves, get a whiteboard out, and really debate and argue and brainstorm and evaluate. To me, this is what people who go to business school who do case studies, they love to do it in business school. And then we go into the workplace and we rarely take enough time to do this well. Monthly strategic meetings are where we solve big problems and change the direction of an organization. And I think this is so much fun, but we cannot possibly do it while we're talking about all these things in one meeting. Then there's the fourth kind of meeting, and I call this the quarterly. And I really do think there's something about doing it quarterly, offsite. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, no, not an offsite meeting where we're going to go golfing or catch each other falling out of a tree or doing some experiential exercise. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about once a quarter, getting out of the office and stepping back and breathing. It might be a day. It might be half a day. It might be 2, and saying, how are things going? How are we doing as a team? How's the culture? How's the organization? What's going on the competitive landscape? Is there anything we need to be thinking about? Stepping back and just evaluating. These are all fundamentally different kinds of conversations. They don't work when we do them at once. I like to say they don't work in our homes either. I like to tell a joke about having meeting stew in my house. My wife Laura and I, we would often have our meeting stew as we're getting ready for work or to take the kids to school in the bathroom. We're both brushing our teeth. And we say things like, who's picking the kids up from school today? Hey, what are we doing this weekend? Should we have another baby? Where should we go on vacation? Hey, what's for dinner tonight? And the next day, my wife says, Pat, I'm pregnant. And I said, I thought we were having chicken for dinner because I thought we were brainstorming. She thought we were solving a problem. And the point of the matter is, this is what we do at work. And people leave those meetings and saying, oh, that was absolutely confusing. What we need to do is we need to separate out these conversations, and we need to make sure that we're having very focused discussions, and all of this time will be not that overwhelming, and it will allow you to make your organization run so much better. So 4 different kinds of meetings to avoid meeting stew, non-boring meetings through the first 10 minutes and great conflict. You will transform meetings in your organization from penance to something truly productive.